Okay. Kevin, very quick. Housing affordability is the biggest issue with millennials, the biggest issues facing millennials in Canada. Quickly, recommendations.
We need to get more supply on track. We need to find ways to help them with down payments, and we need to do something about the mortgage rules that we have in place right now to recognize that first-time homebuyers are actually the lowest risk group of people of all ages in terms of risk and defaults in that. So we really need to look at supply, mortgage rules, and making sure we don't pile more on code costs.
Thank you.
Richards.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your presentations, for being here. I'm going to focus at least mainly on you, Mr. Lee. I've got some questions in regards to housing and some of the issues around it. I'm obviously really concerned right now about the ability for first-time homeowners and first-time home buyers, whether it be buying a new construction or whether it be resale, based on a few things. One of them being, of course, some of the mortgage rule changes that this government's made. One of them being some of the issues that arise with the building code changes that are being proposed in terms of the affordability issues that will be created there. I believe you've given some statements in the past about the increased costs. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of between $30,000 and $50,000 for whether it be a new build or whether it be renovations that are required in order to sell a home. So those are significant issues, and they are going to prevent, by some estimates for the mortgage rules themselves, I've seen about 20% maybe of people that won't be able to any longer be able to get into a home. And that's a big thing, right? That's a huge thing for Canadians. It's something that's a source of pride to be able to say you're a homeowner. It's also often one of the best investments that many people make. And so we're going to limit, and this government is going to limit that opportunity for maybe as many as 20% of people who might have otherwise had that opportunity. So I wanted to just ask you a little bit, you had mentioned some of these things in your opening remarks, but maybe just give you an opportunity to elaborate a bit on some of those thoughts. And I guess I'll start with the mortgage rules, the stress test. Do you see that significantly decreasing new home construction and therefore potentially the employment in Canada as a result? Because obviously, as we know, it's a significant source of employment as well in new home construction. So what are your thoughts on that? And I guess in addition, the ability for people to get into a home for the first time.
Yeah, there's no question it's knocking people out of the housing market to a pretty significant degree. That affects jobs, it affects construction. Unfortunately, it affects jobs and construction in the most extreme manner in the areas that can least afford to have it happen. So in places like Alberta that have been facing the challenge with the oil and forest fires, etc., Atlantic Canada, which is still trying to recover from 2009. In those areas where there is still an opportunity to have construction at a decent rate, we're seeing major slowdowns, and that should be part of the local economy. And I think the other thing we have to look at too, when we're knocking people out of the housing market, you're not just talking about the current economy, you're talking about the future. Like, where are these people going to be at the time of retirement if they are never able to get into the market? We had stories when some of the mortgage rules came in of people being rejected and then going and buying a car and say, well, we're not going to be able to afford a house, we're going to take the money we saved and buy a car. I don't think that that's the way we want to have our financial planning occur in Canada. We would like to see people investing in their future and as an investment. I also think that there's a strange leaning by some right now suggesting that housing is a bad investment or isn't the investment it used to be. We know housing goes through cycles. Prices go up, prices go down, but over the course of time, just like the stock market, it's pretty darn steady, and plus it's putting shelter over your head. So I think that we need to remember why Canadians are where we are in terms of success as a society. Homeownership has been a huge part, and it's time to re-engage in solutions for that.
So on that same line, these building code changes that could potentially cost homeowners $30,000 to $50,000. What kind of an impact do you think that will have on both new home construction and the ability for people to own a home? Again, we want to try to encourage this, I believe, rather than, as you said, sort of what we're seeing is sort of defeating the whole purpose. If people are instead just creating debt in other areas because they can't do a home. And I'm not sure that really serves any kind of purpose, at least not the purpose that we've heard that it's supposed to serve.
Well, that's exactly right. And when we look at energy efficiency in housing, particularly on new, we're doing incredibly well and have been for a long time. We're 50% better now than we were 25 years ago in new housing. So, and we continue to improve. The next changes are going to be very expensive changes. We've hit all the low-hanging fruit. As a simple example, we can't fit any more insulation in a wall, so you're getting fatter walls. That's not only more expensive to build, it's taking away from floor space, and land prices, as everybody knows, are what's really driving a lot of costs right now. So you're talking about, yeah, $30,000, $40,000 when some of the stretch targets we're talking about over the next 11 years. 11 years is not a long time to change technology, and that's really what we're looking at. So our main point on things like energy efficiency are the code changes need to occur as they become affordable, not before, and knock people out. So we need to invest in research. We need to have affordability part of the code process, so we don't say, oh, we're getting there no matter what the cost, which, while not stated, is exactly where we are right now. By 2030, we need to be at net zero ready levels. Well, that's a 40–50% improvement in energy efficiency. It's $30,000–$40,000 on the average house or more, and that's in the lower mainland of BC in colder climates. In fact, in northern BC, latest studies show it might not even be possible with current technology to get to those types of levels in any way that makes any sense. So we really need to look at it in a way that we say, okay, if we want to get there, that's fine, but let's do it together. Let's find the affordable ways to do it. Let's invest in research, and let's not put code provisions in place until we can show we've got an affordable solution that's not knocking more people out of the market. The retrofit side is a whole other story. That's where the opportunity is. There is a talk of regulation on the renovation side of the market. You have seen nothing in terms of pushback yet until you watch trying to implement code effects on the retrofit side. Right now, when you change a code requirement, there's not really a voter there, and that's why you see less pushback, and you see organizations like the Home Builders Association saying, hey, new home buyers can't afford that, but new home buyers aren't really voters. They don't get that. But try and say, when you replace your siding, you're going to not just replace your siding, you're going to put, $20,000 or $10,000 of insulation behind it. You will hear about it. That's not going to go over very well. It's going to become very political. A tax credit, though, which incents people to do it, we've seen that work before. We could see it happen again.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your contributions. Very interesting presentations, a lot of great ideas. Mr. Lee, when you talk about the energy retrofit program, the same thing, music to my ears. Very important suggestions.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for coming this morning. I just want to, first of all, say, as a former president of the Chamber of Commerce and a former CFIB member, I'm quite familiar with your organizations and a lot of the work you do. And in my previous role, Kevin, I know we've talked a lot about energy efficiency, and so those are a couple of the things I'd like to talk about.
Mr. Lee, we regularly see politicians simultaneously increase housing prices through burdensome regulations, zoning restrictions, taxes, and excessive fees, and then in the same breath say that they want to spend more tax dollars to reduce housing prices. Do you want to comment at all on this paradox?
I haven't seen much tax spending to reduce house prices. Can you give me an example? I fail to know of one.
Fair enough. There's been a lot of spending. I'm not sure any of it has succeeded in reducing house prices, but it is always done under the quote affordable housing objective.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we draw the distinction between affordable housing and housing affordability. There have been a lot of investments. Certainly the current government with its national housing strategy came out with a national social housing strategy, and that's important. And Jeff's spoken to the investment that's been done to support those in need. But let's not confuse that with an actual national housing strategy that addresses affordability and housing that people, regular people, new home buyers with two incomes should be able to afford, but can't. And so there's been a lot of talk about investing in affordable housing, but let's not confuse the two. And Canadians are not unaware of this, and we did our recent poll, speaking of public opinion. Canadians are very well aware and very concerned about the problems of just frankly being able to afford a house, and they recognize that governments are not doing that right now. Taxes, regulations, everything else are driving up those costs. Zoning is driving up those costs. It's time to do something about it, Mr.
Going to have to cut you there. We got need time for one more question.